Welcome back to the show where we run you through all the Dolphins news you need to know about. After the news you need to know about, we run you through the fan Q&A where we answer fans' questions. Not tons of news to talk about on today's show. Definitely ever since the game ended, because obviously I think the requirement for IR is 3 weeks. I've been refreshing Jalen Ramsey news as much as possible because the timeline on him isn't quite clear. And I'm just really excited for him to get back into the lineup. It's been awesome seeing him on the sideline as well. For every single game, he's been very active on the sideline. Watching him and Tua celebrate while we score 70 points was really just an amazing watch, an amazing game to watch. But there is no new update on Jalen, unfortunately. It doesn't really seem like, hopefully maybe we'll get some stuff next week. Or maybe even during this week, someone can ask someone in the building how that's going, because I would like to know. It's been a while since anybody asked. And obviously Jeff Wilson as well, who's dealt with a thumb injury. It's going to be hard for him to get any carries now, especially after last week. Even Ahmed, honestly. I just think, maybe Achane was more hurt than we thought. But to put a button on it, there is no new update as of right now on Jalen Ramsey. In terms of other news, there isn't any. Nothing really has happened newsworthy other than River Craycraft. I forgot to mention that. For more injury update, Mike McDaniel said in his press conference that it's going to be more than a day-to-day thing, so it's more of a serious injury. So that's interesting. There were some other minor injuries that don't seem to be long-term, which is good. Obviously, Jalen Phillips has been dealing with some stuff. Also, we saw Bradley Chubb on the sideline. Seemed like he had some type of stinger issue. Doesn't seem like he's severely hurt either, which is good news. And then the Christian Wilkins thing. I still don't really know why he went into the tunnel, but it doesn't seem like anybody else is hurt, which is good news. That's it for the news. There, like I said, there really isn't any noteworthy news. So let's get into the game. And before we get into the game, we have to talk about the record-breaking day. The Dolphins have scored 130 points this season, the second most in a team's first 3 games of a season in NFL history. The teams are on that list. There's only 2 modern-era teams. There's only the 2013 Broncos and the 2023 Dolphins. And the 2023 Dolphins have scored more than the 2013 Denver Broncos. Now, if people remember that offense, it was phenomenal. Maybe it was the year after that. But we almost beat that Broncos team. It might have been in 2014 in Denver. But, that team was really fun to watch with Demaryius Thomas and Julius Thomas. Sean Moreno, Wes Welker in the slot, Emmanuel Sanders. Really good run game, obviously. Really good quarterback play. And to be even mentioned in the same breath as them is pretty crazy. If you look at the Broncos numbers that year, they're insane. The other teams on that list were the 1968 Cowboys, who lead the list with 132, and they are the 1966 Cowboys, who are tied with the 2013 Broncos at 3rd place. So, again, only 2 modern teams on that list. The Dolphins are also the first team in NFL history to record 5 passing touchdowns and 5 rushing touchdowns in the same game, and the second team in NFL history to record more than 700 yards of offense since the Rams did it in 1951. Again, not in the modern day era. They're also the first team in history to score 70 points with 700 yards of offense, and the second to record 300 yards and 300 yards rushing and 300 yards passing. Wait, we're in the second. Okay, I was confused by that. And the second to record 300 yards rushing and 300 yards passing in a single game. They also scored 10 touchdowns. They also, in one game, have scored more points than a ton of NFL teams around the league. Devon Achane was one of the best rookie performances in the history of the NFL in a game. I believe he had 4 touchdowns, over 200 yards of total offense. And then obviously Raheem Mostert, who also is just having a phenomenal season. goes over 100 yards again, with I believe 3 or 4 touchdowns as well. And then obviously Tua with the 4 touchdowns on the day, and was perfect in the first half. Almost got Ryan Tannehill's record. Obviously the Dolphins are up there in the pantheon of most points scored in the history of the NFL. They could have broke the regular season record that was set by the Washington football team in 1966 against the New York Giants, where they scored 72 points. They elected not to go for it. I'm not really upset about it. I say I'm not really upset. Would I have liked for them to go for the record? Yeah, I think that's such an important record. To do that in the modern NFL is insane. But back then, especially when we're talking 50s, 40s, 60s NFL football, the forward pass hadn't even been around that long. Like, the competition was terrible. Very one-sided. There wasn't even that many teams in the league back then. The AFL hadn't even merged with the NFL yet. So there's a lot of different reasons why it's a lot easier to score 70 points back then than it is now. It's not even close. And then you think about all the great offenses that have came and went in the history of the NFL since then. You think about the 90s Cowboys. You think about the greatest show on turf in the early 2000s. You think about the 07 New England Patriots. None of them did that, which is very... I mean, even think about the late 90s Vikings. None of them did that. Frankly, none of them even came close to something like that, which is insane. And that's we're talking about the modern time, the modern NFL. None of them did that, which is crazy. Not even the '84 Dolphins did something quite like that. So, and even the fact that this team is even up there, and you talk about franchise records. I mean, it's just really cool. I've had to, I can't believe some of the stuff I'm reading over the last few days. I mean, I don't know what else to say. I mean, it's completely unbelievable what they've been able to do in the first 3 games. And there's a lot of reasons why this team, and I know a lot of people have brought up some stuff that I wanted to talk about, that this team is the same that it was last year statistically in terms of like Tua's numbers. They're like almost identical. Well, the run game stats are obviously a lot better this year than they were a year ago. And offensively, in terms of ranking in the NFL, offensive numbers, they're actually much better than they were a year ago. And the reason for that is really 2 of the most obvious things that you could see on Sunday comparing these 2 teams from this year to last year is the fact that the offensive line is much, much better. It's way better than I even thought it could be. And then the run game is phenomenal. I mean, from play design to execution to the talent level that they have to execute those plays is on a different level. And those are the reasons why this offense, I mean, they could have just ran the ball. They didn't even have to throw yesterday, or not yesterday, on Sunday, and they still could have won the game. So that's how much improved. I mean, Dokes came into the game in the fourth quarter, and he was ripping off runs. So it's not just the blocking. I had my concerns about A-Chain. He is a lot better than I thought. Like, a lot of the things that I had issues with was vision from what we saw in the preseason in college, and his open field ability to make people miss. And his vision was phenomenal on Sunday. And obviously a lot of those things that we talked about before, like, okay, A&M really didn't use him correctly, especially someone with that type of skill set. And I think those are starting to be true. I mean, clearly they didn't use him right in A&M, and his vision was phenomenal on Sunday. Made a lot of really nice cuts, whether it was inside or outside, very decisive, and has the ability to cut at a very special pace. Like, him when he was cutting in that game, very little people can move in the NFL like that. So he is going to be much better than I thought, and he proved that on Sunday. So, you know, this team is, I think, it means a lot to the fan base. I think I can't even put into words it's almost like, I think a lot of fans have described it in terms of Dolphins fans being in shock, in terms of being like, it's just crazy how fast this team, and especially offensively, when we talked about this, the Dolphins haven't had a top 10 passing offense since 1995 before Mike McDaniel got here. That's a long time. And we've went through all of and I've talked about this before, I even probably talked about it last week, but think about that. Since 1995, they haven't had a competent passing game. That's a long time. That's a really, really long time. And then you think about all the quarterbacks that have come after Dan Marino retired. It's a long list of terrible. And to see something like this, it's phenomenal. Like, and this isn't just like, oh, we're back. This is a historically great offense, and like I said, words cannot describe finally seeing some competent offensive football. And I want to mention this too: the Dolphins haven't had an offensive line like this. I think the best offensive line the Dolphins have had in the last 20 years or 15 years is, or we'll say since 2010, because if you go before that, I would say probably 2008, but since 2010, it's probably, I would say 2011, or you could argue 2016, even though they couldn't stay healthy. But those offensive lines, and that's it. After those two, it wasn't just like, oh, these offensive lines were okay. No, they were bottom of the league awful. I mean, even Chris Collinsworth said on Sunday Night Football, like, this is the best offensive line the Dolphins have had in many, many, many years. So I don't think that can be overstated enough, how seeing a competent offensive line on Sundays is really refreshing as well. But all in all, just I could talk about this for literally ever. As a person who's a huge fan of the history of the sport and really understanding what they did on Sunday and the totality of the history of the game. Sorry. And how special that is. To be mentioned, even like last week when I said we saw like, oh, this is how they're doing compared to the 84 team. Like, to watch a team on Sundays that is on that level is special, and I think everybody should enjoy it. This does not come around. I mean, we're talking about something that hasn't happened in over 50 years. I think, was it 60 years? It can't be 60 years. Anyway, the point is that it hasn't happened in a long time, and to enjoy it while it's here. I think Dolphins fans definitely are going to enjoy it, and the run game, man, cannot be overstated enough. Like, how important that was, and I don't think anybody could foresee how much improved it is from a year ago. Like, it's such a drastic improvement. You can't even put into words. Like, so obviously we can get into the game. Like, again, looking at these numbers, it's just insane. The Dolphins win the football game 70-20 in their home opener. They had 726 yards of total yards, almost identical passing and rushing. We just read 350 rushing, 376 passing. They had 30 first downs in the game. They did all of this while they did not kick it. I don't think they kicked a field goal at any point in the game, if I'm remembering correctly. And they dominated the game they averaged 10 yards per play. I think the most notable performance of the game was definitely A-Chain. To do that as a rookie is absurd. And this is his really first game getting touches. He had 18 carries for 203 yards, 2 rushing touchdowns. And that's rushing yards, by the way, 203 rushing yards. Averaged 11 yards rushing a carry. And receiving, had 4 catches for 30 yards, averaged 7 yards a catch, and had 2 touchdowns. And that is really first of all, it's better than even what I thought he could be. And it really makes, seeing him play on Sunday, the sky is the limit for him. The comparisons to Darren Sproles and even Reggie Bush. He could be on, another level of that. I think he really could be if he can continue to kind of put it all together. And God bless Raheem Mostert, who had another. I thought he had so many things about Raheem Mostert's game that are so underrated. His open field ability, the ability to run speed to power, I think is very underrated with Raheem Mostert. And I didn't know he had that kind of playmaking. And I've said this many times, but I didn't really know he had that playmaking ability when he came to Miami. So, again, it cannot be stated enough how good of a rookie performance. That was one of the all-time great Dolphins rookie performances ever. And, I mean, it was phenomenal. We've talked about Tua a ton. Tyreek Hill is climbing climbing the all-time Dolphins. Like, here are the best Dolphins ever. He's climbing that list very fast, like very, very fast. One thing I was thinking about, and this is going to be such a deep cut that nobody cares about listening to this, but when the Dolphins traded for Paul Warfield in the 70s, it had a very similar effect on the team. Obviously, they ended up winning 2 Super Bowls in a row because of that trade, and he's also a receiver. So it's cool to kind of see that happen again. And not, obviously, if we do 2 championships, then, I mean, oh my God. But, to have that same success again trading for a receiver, and the fact that, Mike McDaniel and Don Shula were in their first few years when they made those trades. I thought that was an interesting, similar comparison in some ways. But Tyreek Hill, like I said, climbing the all-time great Dolphin. And then Tua, who I feel it just is a great feeling to have a great quarterback under center. It really, really is. Like, I can't describe, not only that, but to have the quarterback coach combination is so special. And to have it in Miami is just a great feeling. It really, really, really is a phenomenal, phenomenal feeling. So, and we're talking about 2 great, a great coach and a great quarterback. So, Robert Hunt, Austin Jackson, who's having a much better season than I ever thought he could possibly have. Isaiah Wynn, who was a great pickup. Connor Williams, I forgot to mention him. He seems to be fine, even though Eichenberg came in for him. I think, actually, didn't Connor come back in the game? He might not have. But yeah, that's it for really the offense. I think we covered everything. I mean, Mike McDaniel, I think everybody around the world has talked about how special he is at game planning, and the play designs are phenomenal. The shovel pass was just insane. It was, it was a beautiful, beautiful play. But I do want to talk about the defensive side of the football. So here's the interesting thing that happened in this game. Obviously, Cater was moved outside, and they moved Bethel inside in this game. Which I think was interesting. Maybe they're trying something out, or maybe it was game specific to this game. I'm not really sure. But defensively, I thought the run defense has been much better ever since week 1. Javonte Williams only averaged 3 yards a carry, had 11 carries for 42 yards. When they needed to stop the run, they did it. They even ran on 3rd and 4, and Jerome Baker and David Long Jr. just smashed, I think it was Williams, in the backfield. Defensively, I thought it was really, really good. The pass rush is great. Russell Wilson, I thought, had a really good game because he should have been sacked a lot in this game, and he was able to kind of move in the pocket or get the ball out just in time and make some really great throws, especially down the field. But I think the only concern, I hate to say this, the only concern defensively, I think, is just executing the plays that are called. It would be nice to have Jalen Ramsey back to have someone in the defense who's ran it for a long time to really help with the communication on the back end. Because there were a few times in this game where, it seemed like there was either a busted coverage or a miscommunication with some of the underneath routes. Cortland Sutton, even Mims, there was no one even around them on some of those underneath routes. So that stuff has to be kind of cleaned up a little bit. But other than that, I thought the defense played great. Van Ginkel continues to have a career year. Bradley Chubb and Jalen Phillips, who Jalen kind of seemed like they were kind of slowly bringing him along in this game. And then Bradley, who had more of a quiet game in this game. I thought the Broncos did a good job of game planning for him, especially when he went inside. They did a good job of kind of picking that stuff up, which we really kind of abused against New England. And in this game, I thought the Broncos did a good job of kind of cleaning that up, which opened it up for Van Ginkel on the outside, and I thought he was able to kind of take advantage of that. So I don't think defensively I'm happy with where we're at. Javon Holland, who according to PFF is the highest graded, even though that stuff doesn't make any sense to me anyway, but he's the highest graded safety in the league. There's 2 huge turnovers. He's been really great in man coverage as well. We got to see Brandon Jones in this game for a little bit, which was really nice. Deshaun Elliott's been playing good football, though, so it's going to be kind of hard to get him out of the lineup. So, yeah, defensively, everything's pretty great. I think the rotation with Deshaun Hand is a little weird, and Emmanuel Ogbah hasn't looked his best. This is the best he's looked in a long time against Denver, but against the run, he has to play a little bit better. But other than that, I think the defense looks good. They just have to get better and get more comfortable in the defense itself. That's really it. Christian Wilkins having a great season as well. The fan Q&A. We have a question, fan, to end the show. But again, and I said this last week, it's a blessing to watch this team play. It really is. And to score 70 points in modern day football is absurd. This first question comes from Beef. He says, "Hey Skaggs, if you know if your favorite team is going to win the Super Bowl, would you not waste any time showing off and say, let's get it done now? I feel that way about the Dolphins this year. It's been about 50 years since the Dolphins won the Super Bowl. Not only that, but do you think we can go undefeated, even though it's too early to tell? I know it depends if Tua stays healthy, but I don't think he'll get hurt this time. Tua looks like he's on a mission. He's serious right now." Going undefeated is really hard. I think you have to have a special set of circumstances to do it. One of those being that, even when the Patriots did it in 2007, the AFC East wasn't very good. So you have to have a certain set. A lot of things have to go your way to do that. But I think what really needs to be focused on is the fact that this team has not, as a franchise, the Dolphins haven't had a home playoff game since 2001, when Lamar Smith beat the Colts in the playoffs, and that's the last playoff game that they've won. So let's take baby steps one at a time, because that to me would mean everything. To be at home in a playoff game and to win a playoff game would mean everything. But I think this team is really, really good, and this team, when I was watching them on Sunday, I was like, yeah, this is a Super Bowl contending team, and I haven't felt that way in many years. I think ever, really, at least when I have been live. This next question comes from Beef. He says, "Skaggs, did you expect the Broncos to give us more of a challenge on secondary, especially with Patrick Surtain? If not, how did you think we were able to dissect the defense up?" Here's what I thought going into this game. It's going to be hard for anybody to beat us at home. I honestly think it's almost impossible, because if the defense, it would have to take the defense playing awful for us to lose, and making like some mental mistakes like we did against the Chargers. Because at home, back in the day, I mean, we had an insane. I think we held the record for most consecutive home wins. I think it was 25. It's hard to play in South Florida in September and October. NFL coaches have said that for years, former and people that are still in the league. And that's what they like an okay to like. Okay, this is like an 8-win. We've seen that with like okay Dolphins teams. Like it's hard to beat us in Miami. It's even harder to do that when this team is really, 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 really good. So I felt really good going into this game because of that. Like I said, it's going to be almost impossible to beat us at home this year. This next question comes from Mark. He says, "What did we just see? How mad were when Chris said we're probably more worried about it than they are, but now you also feel like I guess they knew." I don't know what the question is, Mark. What did you just see? What did we just see? Oh, like you talking about the running backs when you said your guys are probably worried about it than we are. Yeah. I mean, we would have had no clue. And honestly, I'm not gonna lie, the beat writers must be the most like skeptical, cynical human beings on the planet. I don't know how you could watch this team in training camp and not be like, I mean, give Omar Kelly credit. He did say Kendall Lamb was playing good, but I don't know. I feel like we've undersold the fact how good. I mean, how do you not watch them in camp and think, oh my God, this run game is that much better? This last question comes from Beef. He says, "Hey Skaggs, how psyched are you now that we are going to Buffalo after the biggest blowout of the season? Is this game going to be a much bigger statement if we win against the Bills, depending on how much we win?" Going to Buffalo is really hard to win. Historically, for the Dolphins, it's hard. It's not an easy game to win. The last time we won in Buffalo was in 2016 on a Dan Carpenter field goal in overtime to go to the playoffs. So, was it a Dan Carpenter field? No, it was a... definitely wasn't Dan Carpenter. I don't know why I'm blanking on his name. The point is, it's been a long time. I think Dan Carpenter was actually kicking for Buffalo in that game. But anyway. Why can't I remember his name? I don't remember. Yeah, so it's hard to win in Buffalo. But it's nice that we have this early in the season. I can't even remember the last time we played Buffalo this early in the season. Like, for real. They always give us Buffalo at the end of the year, which I always thought was dumb. I'm happy it was flipped this year, especially, and they flipped New England, which they've done that way more frequently than they have Buffalo. But yeah, it's hard. It's gonna be a fun game. I'm just excited to watch them again on Sunday. Honestly, that's the thing I'm most excited about. As you guys can hear the cat screaming in the background, but that is it. I really have nothing else to say. Blessed to watch this team play on Sundays. Great team, great head coach, great quarterback, great defensive coordinator, fun defense to watch. And that is it, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you guys in the next one.